My name's Joseph or Pepe Rosado. I come from split both ways, both mum and dad, Italian and Spanish descent. They came to Gibraltar in the 1780s, 1800s, 1820s, and we've been British for the last 150 years or more. And it's something that's happened all over the world. People have emigrated and they started families elsewhere. And this has created places like Australia or Canada, United States. A lot of it coming from Europe, and a lot of poor Negroes that were taken out of Africa and so on. And these people have become new entities. And the same thing happened here. Gibraltar was taken for the Austrian pretender to the Spanish throne. And then people settled here. The only thing is that Spain would not accept that people that came here to settle were the same as people that went to the United States to settle. In fact, we are older than the United States. And it's a great pity because there is a great feeling for Spain from Gibraltar. It's a beautiful country, there's many good things to it. And yet, I blame Franco more than anybody else and the people around him for what has happened here in the last half century. Fortunately or unfortunately, Franco was on the side of Hitler, and when the war started we were evacuated. Gibraltar was it is, not that it was, it still is, in the most important geographical position in the world. And Britain expected that Hitler would try and come through Spain, take Gibraltar and close the Mediterranean. That would have been the end of passage to India, Malta, Cyprus, Egypt, you name it. And Franco was very pro-Hitler. So anyway, the people were evacuated from here, as I'm sure you heard from other Gibraltarians say. We went to Morocco first, French Morocco. Then Churchill bombed the French fleet at Oran, at Messa Kabir. We were spat at and kicked at and bayoneted off two ships, saying, British assassins, English pigs. And eventually, after hearing that and that, this and that, I finished up in London. 1 year old, I lived right through the Blitz, and we came back when I was 5. So I remember very little of Britain. I'm sure others have a lot more to say about that. And then, after the war, I think something quite wrong was done by the Western world. They helped Germany, which had created the whole mess, and Italy, who had joined them, and actually fought, whilst Franco had not fought. They were feeding and giving Germany and Italy for years after the war. Money and everything you could imagine, food, everything, whilst everybody turned their back on Franco. The excuse is that whilst Germany and Italy now were going to become democratic, Franco was still a dictator. But I feel very sorry for the Spaniards because after the Second World War, for the next 10 years, they were almost dying of hunger, and no one was going to help them. And I thought that was wrong. And the way of Franco of uniting his people and so on, one of the things he did was create this claim for Gibraltar. Now, Spain, the Spanish nation, lost Gibraltar when a Spanish king died with no heirs, and there was a fight between the sort of family that had ruled Spain for almost 2 centuries, which now had a cousin or nephew or whatever who said, well, I should claim the throne, an Austrian prince. And the other one was Louis XIV, who had been many years already King of France and was a very clever guy. And he said, no, I'll put my nephew there, and Spain would become like a back garden to France. So you had the War of the Spanish Succession, and Louis XIV won. He agreed that he wasn't going to walk into Spain, but he put his nephew a new dynasty. What had been in Spain the Habsburg dynasty now became a French dynasty, the Bourbons. Gibraltar, which had been taken in the name of the Habsburgs, now found that they were signing a treaty in which Gibraltar was going to come under the Bourbons. But it's a formal treaty, and Gibraltar was ceded by the Spanish crown to the British crown. A formal treaty. There's a clause there that said if Britain ever thought it didn't want it anymore, Spain would have free, what you call in English, first refusal. It would go back to Spain rather than anything else. Fair comment. Now, Britain has never said we don't want Gibraltar. But Franco started this new idea that he wanted Gibraltar back. Spain, since 1713, has always said, if you don't want it, I'd like it back. I haven't claimed it's ours, you took it away from us. No, there was a treaty. But Franco started this new idea. And then he taught in schools in Spain and everywhere where they could get at the masses, just like Hitler did. He taught people that Gibraltar had been taken away from Spain, that it was an insult to Spain, that it was a thorn in their hearts, a pebble in their shoe. Gibraltar was full of prostitutes and bastards, and it had to be returned to Spain because it was theirs, and it was no question about the treaty. And this was taught in Spain by Franco until his death, and worse still, it still carried on. And it was taught from cradle to university. I experienced myself that they say the border closed in 1969, and that's not quite true. It was shut in 1969. I stopped going to Spain in 1964 because I felt I wasn't wanted there anymore. I was being ill-treated, so I said, I'm not coming anymore. And I had very good friends in Spain. Excellent friends, almost like family. My father died in 1967, and they said a mass for him in the town next to us, La Linea. And I went there to this mass they offered for my father's soul. And afterwards I went to the families who were almost like family to me. And one of them said, oh look, it's been a few years you haven't come. Come and listen to the little kid pray. He's only 5. He's so cute. And he was cute. And he sat there, he kneeled there and he was praying for his family, even prayed for me and for our friend who's come today to visit us. And then like he forgot something. So, he says, yes. And for my Gibraltar, which we wanted back, and it's a thorn in my heart. And I looked at the mother, and she said, no, not me, it's the nursery. He's taught that in the nursery. So that's one side, from cradle. Now we go to university. I have a very, very good friend in Seville, with plenty of knowledge, money, all the rest of it, and he's got a fantastic encyclopedia. And only a few years ago, let's have a look at what it says about Gibraltar. And he says there that they give us electricity, they give us water, that they're very magnanimous to us, and we are very anti-Spanish. I said, what's this? And he said, well, you know what happens, politics. So I can safely say that from cradle to university, people have been told a lot of lies, and unfortunately, creating how shall I say, not just a feeling of Gibraltar is something we want back, but a feeling that we are dangerous to them. Now, if you were to stop a German in the streets in 1935 and ask him, what do you think of the Jews? That German most probably would have said, oh, very bad, we should get rid of them, because they were being indoctrinated. And that was just a few years. Spain has gone through over 50 years of this indoctrination from cradle to university. And that has to stop. Gibraltar has a lot of things to offer. It's very beautiful. There are many religions here. We've got a beautiful history. Many things I could talk about. But what I can never accept is this attitude that has carried on in Spain even after Franco now. From cradle to university, where at every corner they try to trip us up, we are treated like dogs. That is the feeling in Spain. Behind the scenes, goodness knows, one day, unfortunately, Spain is not like Britain or America where good records are kept. Records are put away and probably destroyed. But one day maybe it comes out. But we know for certain that the Spanish government, for example, has given instructions behind the scenes that any athletic organization, any sports that has liaison with Gibraltar, government will have nothing to do with them. They withdraw their goodwill or maybe money they were going to give them. All this going on behind the scenes at all times and in every sphere. If they could stop us taking part in Miss World, they would. They have tried to stop us taking part in many things. Other things we have tried to join worldwide or in Europe, they have blocked us. And very few people realize this. This is why I think that in many ways, United Nations, European Union, it's all a little bit of a farce. Nobody stands up and says, well, wait a minute, what are you doing to these people? You claim Gibraltar. Well, claim Gibraltar. Maybe yours is one day or maybe it's never yours. But what you're doing to the people there, in the 21st century, you cannot do those things. And yet people accept it. They get up in the United Nations, they tell a lot of lies, and that's it. People accept these things. Instead of telling them, wait a minute, let's hear the truth. Or let's send somebody there to find out. Now, I'm not saying that we are perfect angels in Gibraltar, and all the Spaniards are terrible. No. You have good and bad in Gibraltar, as you have them in Spain, in America, and anywhere you go in this world. It's called being a human being. And we all make mistakes, and we all fall the wrong way, and then we get up and so on. And the same thing happens here as everywhere else in the world. So I feel it's terribly unfair that the rest of the world, including Britain and their Foreign Office, many a time just stand by and look the other way because we're not going to antagonize Spain because it's a big nation. And I think that is disgusting. We owe everything here in Gibraltar to its geographical position. Otherwise it wouldn't exist. It was a small little town because the Arabs arrived here in 711 and eventually they made some sort of fortress and a little port, and they were the ones that started. Otherwise it would have been one more promontory or bit of land jetting out into the sea in Spain. Gibraltar in fact doesn't belong either to Spain or to Africa. It's a bit of limestone that came out of the sea, and it was pushed here a few million years ago. But because it is where it is, it became geographically a very important place. And it was proved during the First World War, the Second World War, and even nowadays that is the critical position to help supply aid, and sometimes humanitarian aid. We're not talking just of bellicose matters always. Sometimes humanitarian aid, like you had a ship now leaving quickly last week to collect people that were stranded in Libya or takes urgent supplies, medicines or whatever. Geographically it's in an ideal position. But also apart from that, because there's such a mixture of culture in Gibraltar, religions and so on, it's a very interesting place. It's also blessed with having a beautiful cave, beautiful lovely cave. It's blessed with having had, unfortunately, trauma of 14 sieges, and some of the vestiges of those sieges are still visible. You have two cathedrals, an Anglican and Roman Catholic cathedral, you have synagogues, you have a mosque, and you have umpteen other religions as well, Hindu and so on. So in such a small place, I doubt there's any other town, city in the world that has so much and going on for so long, because you had the Battle of Hastings, you had the famous years of the Roman Empire in Rome, but Gibraltar is ongoing through this. From 711 to today, there's always something going on. And therefore it is a place of great attraction. And it's a great pity that we have this ongoing thing by Spain on Gibraltar. They called the problem of Gibraltar as a problem of Spain. Spain is the problem here, not Gibraltar. And it's a great pity that they don't get on with us as they should. If they want Gibraltar to be Spanish, God knows what's going to happen in 10 years or 1,000 years from now. You look around the world and the map of the world is always changing. For all we know, half of Spain could go to the Arabs again. You never know what's around the corner. But to have this antagonism and throwing dirt at us, hoping some of it will stick, and it does. In many instances, people around the world pick up little bits and pieces about Gibraltar without knowing the real truth. So I'm grateful for people like yourself who come around here to find out the truth. That we haven't got 4 heads and legs and tails. People are people here, the same as they're anywhere else in the world. And they talk about, they've got scandalous things going on with the banks in Gibraltar, of companies, and all very opaque, as the Spanish call it, very opaque. The banks in Gibraltar are not from Gibraltar, they're from Spain and from Britain and other places. So it's not the Gibraltarians who've got something going on behind the scenes. We're just one more little city in the world, and we've had banks come here because they found it in their interest to the type of income tax that we have in Gibraltar and so on. It's only the other day that it came out that now it seems that Spain is a place that has most, as they call it, nebulous companies registered in Spain and so on, not Gibraltar. I sometimes think that when Madrid starts throwing mud at us, politically and otherwise, they're probably trying to cover up for things that they are doing wrong, and the best way of defense has always been attack. The same that's happening now in the hinterland right next to us. They're really having a go at us for filling in a few square yards, few square meters of the sea, because we need the space. And they are saying this is terrible, what is doing to the Bay of Gibraltar, which they want to call it something else, but what's doing to the Bay of Gibraltar, what he's doing to the fish, what he's doing to this, what he's doing to that. And yet an aerial photograph will show that only in the last 15, 20 years, they have filled in 5 to 8 times more than we have filled in. So I suppose that the best form of defense is attack. And that's a very blatant way of looking at things. When we look around, you wonder, why are they saying this about Gibraltar? And then years later, the penny drops that something was happening you didn't know about, and the best way of defense is attack. Politically, we have advanced even beyond what the Spaniards would have liked. And I think politically, Gibraltar is very mature, and has been mature, not since now, but almost since the last constitution. For a very interesting thing, which I'll explain in a minute. So politically, we're extremely advanced. There's practically no difference in Gibraltar to any nation that's democratically governed in the world. This question that, yes, but it's a colony and Britain has the last say, it's a very sort of nebulous thing in the air. No governor in Gibraltar for the last 30, 40, 50 years has ever interfered in anything. And nowadays, it would be almost, I can't see the moment where a governor would interfere unless it were to be something absolutely crazy. So we govern ourselves as best as we can, and there are politics of left, right, centre going, but the whole spectrum of the thing is based on the Mother of Parliaments, Westminster, and it works. So to call us a colony, I think is wrong. We are self-governing. Now, they talk about this constitution. I remember having a discussion once with one of our great politicians, going back many years. It was Sir Joshua Hassan, who was an amazing person. And this was in his younger years. And we were arguing something about the law, and he said, no, you got that wrong. The law is not brought in, or like in this case, a new constitution, to change things, and then the law changes things overnight. But that's not how it works in a democracy. In a democracy, what happens is, through time, through a number of years, things that you do change. They're no longer done, or they're done differently. And then people sit, think, see what's happening, and then they change the law to suit how things have changed since the previous law was made. So when the new constitution came in, many of the things that the new constitution brought in had already been done, or in some cases not done. There used to be a council at the highest level with the governor that hadn't met for years. It was non-existent. So that went out the window. And Sir Joshua was very right in that. We had advanced between the first and the second constitution to what the second constitution says, and possibly more. And even from the last constitution, we still carry on advancing, because that life is like that. It's always changing. And even though this is just a town of 30,000 people with about 20,000 Gibraltarians, it's still governed on a Westminster type of system, which personally I think is probably the best one going in the world. We're human, and it'll have its faults, but it's a good system and it works. And we have our own laws, but of course, something else here, that again, as I said, when Spain gets up in European Union or United Nations and says things about Gibraltar, we are as much under the system of Europe as Spain and Britain is. We belong to the European Union. So if the European Union tomorrow were to say the cars are now going to drive on the left instead of the right, we would probably have to follow suit. So although we govern ourselves in Europe to a great extent and in many important areas, we are now governed by the European Union. And we sold our rights, we gave in our rights to them many years ago, along with Britain. Today there's very little immigration as such going on, except that because the border was closed by Spain, we had to import labor. You see, overnight, these are things that the world, European Union and United Nations don't seem to care about. Spain suddenly stopped several thousand workers coming into Gibraltar overnight, and we had to import labor or come to a standstill. It ruined many families in Gibraltar, it ruined many businesses, it made others. And we had a lot of UK young youth coming to Gibraltar from Britain to work here. I was working at the time in the employment agency of the government, the government social services and employment. And I remember interviewing a chap who wanted to be a driver. And I said, well, have you got, GCEs or something? He says, well, actually, I'm a qualified doctor in medicine, but I've decided I'm going to spend a couple of years going around the world. I've saw what's happened here, and I'd like to stay here for a year or so, and I want to drive. That's what I want to do. So that's the type of thing that happened here. People came to Gibraltar to help us out, and the largest element that came then to Gibraltar was from Morocco, where we had up to 4,000 or 5,000 Moroccans come to Gibraltar. And they lived in very difficult circumstances, because not that we treated them wrong, as some people are making out now, is that we did not have the facilities. We had to put these 4,000 or 5,000 Moroccans that came over in barrack room accommodation. It's the only thing we had, because Spanish labor had been walking across the border, and there were talking of between 7,000 and 10,000 Spanish workers coming in daily, and it's happening again. This is another thing that Spain wants to ignore. They talk about the things that we do, and the tobacco. There's a few people taking a few boxes of tobacco over every day. You ought to see what happens in the north of Spain, what happens with Andorra and other places. A bit of a laugh. There they bring not a packet of 20, but they bring in a carton of 200 cartons of 200 cigarettes each. And they just wave through. And coming to the ethnic mix, along with the different nationalities came the different religions as well. So we've got a huge variety of religions in Gibraltar, but the predominant one has been, for the last 300 years, Roman Catholic. We're between 60 and 70%, something like that. And then there's a few other Christian religions as well. There's Methodists and Presbyterians and Protestants and what have you. And then there's other areas which are interesting, and we get on with everybody here in Gibraltar. Fortunately, we seem to have had that gift. I have my own ideas why, but we seem to have had that gift where we have placed religion within the places of worship. Once you come out of the place of worship, everybody's the same. And we get on with every religion going. So Gibraltar has a tremendous mix of old Europe, very little here from the New World, very little here from the Far East, but certainly from old Europe there's a lot of and from Morocco, particularly from Morocco. That is the sort of mix that we have in Gibraltar.